10 years of eMTB motor development. Is it actually a case of better, faster, stronger, lighter, or is there still work to do? In today's video, we look at a decade of some very cool eMTB motor innovations, but also ask the question, can things be better? But first up, let's get something out there. Reliability. Yes, I think things could be better, certainly from the feedback that you guys have been giving us. Look, motors fail, ask anybody with a car or motorcycle anywhere, but seemingly not with the frequency of some eMTB motors. I think that anguish of a torque sensor failure or a belt gone or a bearing gone really does spoil that much anticipated day out on your eMTB. So could things be better? Well, they could be if the cat wasn't in the shot, and what I will say is most people in the world will never suffer from that terrible error code that really does spoil your day out. But let's get started. So what we got then, folks? Well, here is a list on screen of some of the main players in the eMTB motor arena at the minute. That's 15 brands, but that is far removed from the reality of just how many brands actually make eMTB motors. A visit to Eurobike will put you in the picture just how many dozens and dozens there are out there. And that's kind of surprising given eMTB didn't really get moving until a decade ago with one of the first motors, the Bosch. Well, I'm not actually sure it had a name, but it was a drive unit and it was one that was adopted by a small amount of brands. It had 80 Newton meters, Eco, Tour, Sport and Speed modes, a 288 watt-hour battery. But if you put that motor into a modern eMTB, it would be considered a low-power eMTB. But yes, the answer is we definitely have seen innovation in the past decade. We've seen a lot more product on the market, whether that be higher peak power or more torque. But what's quite interesting is that first generation Bosch motor, which my neighbour still has never missed a beat since she first had it. But my neighbour aside, with the whole evolution business, yes, we've seen many brands including Bosch, Yamaha, Shimano and Specialized fine-tune their motors. Some are now in their fourth generation. Changes the software, the power, the cadence range, the adjustability, rather than any monster steps. And hey, if you want power and punch, well, there was only one motor, the TQ HPR 120. But hey, let's not get too hung up with power because there's other things such as displays and remotes which have advanced massively in the past decade. Things aren't as clumsy or as breakable as they used to be in the eMTB world. They're far more sleeker these days. The batteries have become neatly integrated with the motors, cabling tidied up, charging ports advanced. Most brands now have apps for their systems, and a lot of motors now have adjustable power characteristics too. But one thing that all brands have searched for is that natural ride feel. I don't actually know what it means, to be honest, but well, let's try, shall we? Now, I think basically what we're talking about is how does a motor engage? Does it engage quickly and smoothly, or maybe hard and aggressive? Now, how a motor engages and disengages with your inputs kind of is an art and does have many interpretations. A motor is affected by the software, yes, the hardware too, but also how you interact with it. So the natural ride feel will always have a factor in the rider's ability or inability to get the best out of it. How the motor delivers the power is arguably more important than torque. The Bosch Performance CX, for example, does feel quite different to a CX Race Limited Edition, that's for sure, and possibly the best example of how engineers can manufacture a character out of power delivery. A Shimano motor in turn feels very different to Panasonic and Bros in terms of overrun and the cadence range. The software is important for sure. It's essential to be able to tune into how each of these bikes delivers its power, how they spin up to speed, and how wide the pocket of power is. So the innovation then is how the character of each motor is now being fine-tuned. And I think one of the greatest examples of that is the difference between the Bosch Performance CX and the CX Race Limited Edition. It's quite a handful, that's for sure. Okay, let's take a break and look at some fine details for a minute. First of all, there is the whole system technology business. Now, 2022 saw the launch of Shimano's EP6 and EP801 with auto shift and free shift technology. We certainly look forward to getting our hands on some of that. The support provided to the rider has evolved, shall we say, but innovations have been very much the eMTB mode on Bosch, the auto mode on Yamaha, and trail mode on Shimano. Oh, and of course, the microtune on Specialized. Torque is something that really has evolved. We have now arrived at a place where we have low, mid, and full power bikes. Although, can we really class the likes of Bosch, Yamaha, Panasonic as full power when the Rocky Mountain is 108 Nm, the Zax 110 Nm, and of course the TQ HPR 120 at 120 Nm? What is full power exactly? But do we need more power? Hell yeah, go and ride the Rocky Mountain Power Play on a technical climb and you'll see that it is one hell of a motor. At the same time, more power does rely on more battery, and I really would like to see how, say, a Rocky Mountain motor sits with a 900 watt-hour battery like you get on the Canyon Spectral. At the other time, I mean, could there be a time in the future when we see an in-between TQ motor in between that 50 and the 120? I think the answer to all that, it depends. It depends on how and where you ride. I mean, I know a lot of my mates that ride in eco and tour mode all the time, so maybe for some people, full power isn't actually necessary. Noise, where do we start with that one? Well, every motor has a different noise level, and that will be affected too by rider weight and terrain. Some motors, well, they have a tinkle, but I've tuned that out ages ago. However, innovation, well, it has to be the TQ HPR 50, which is totally silent. Drag is less of an issue these days, and this has been a feature across the board of eMTB motors, well, more or less. And integration into the frame, well, look at this Rottweiler, isn't it beautiful? Small, light, quiet and natural. I think low to mid assist motors are all the rage at the moment, as we see many of the eMTB motor brands try to coax across some of the MTB fraternity into the eMTB world with these small compact motors. At the end of the day, I don't actually think there is much of a weight difference between say a 1.8 kilogram TQ HPR motor, to a 2.8 kilo Bosch. I think most of the weight difference is actually in the type of batteries that people are using. So excuse the cat for a minute, but I think, when you've got a 360 battery weighing quite a lot less than a 7 to 8 to 900 watt-hour battery, that's where the key difference is not simply in the weight of the motor. Now, if I had a prize for the most underrated motor system, it has to be the giant Sync Drive Pro setup. Adjustable with auto mode and some great battery options with a beautiful power delivery. Pay close attention both now and in the future, folks. You might also be asking, what about the combined motor gearbox system innovations? Well, there's quite a few out there, and most are still sadly quite a way off, it seems. That doesn't mean to say we're not super excited about the prospect. But this very much is the beginning of a new breed of eMTB, which was began in 2018 with Fazua and the 50 Nm elevation system. Through to 2020, we had the Levo SL, the 60 Nm Orbea Rise in 2021 with a custom-tuned EP8 RS motor, and of course Forestal, who introduced their own motor with Bifang and an input of 60 Nm. These were important times as the bikes became lighter at the same time, lighter batteries, lighter weight components. But the innovation here, I think, has to go to three lightweight brands. I think the Shimano EP8 RS, which was pioneered by Orbea, where you can have reduced torque to 60 Nm. I think that's very cool. I think the Fazua Ride 60, where you can have that maximum boost power, max wattage for, 10 or 12 seconds? And of course, the super dinky, super compact and super quiet TQ HPR 50. Which leaves us only a few things to talk about. First of all is the size. We saw that the Gen 2 Levo from Specialized was lighter and more compact than its predecessor. The Yamaha PWX3 lighter by 300 grams and smaller too. The 2022 Bosch CX Race Limited, again smaller and lighter. Then of course we have customization and adjustability. Massive steps have been taken to make the motors we run ever more adjustable. Whether we need to adjust it is another question. I think it's a cool feature to tinker with for sure, but I believe some of the base settings for many eMTB motors is pretty bang on. The detail on some motor adjusting has become as complex as suspension. I just don't think most people need this. However, I do think that the Specialized Levo led the way in terms of motor adjustability, and it certainly made some motor companies open up their motors to the brands that are using them. So the bottom line, has much changed? Well, I think in the last 5 years, not so much, but in the past 10 years, oh yes, monumentally.